But things have been crazy at work. I've been getting home late, and I just didn't get home in time to put out the episode yesterday, which is the first time in quite a while. I've been on schedule for the most part. But anyway, um, I want to stick to my word. This episode, we're going to go back over some things on addiction because, like everything else in this world, the opioid crisis doesn't seem to be going anywhere. In fact, I can barely get on Facebook these days without finding out that yet another person has overdosed or ended up in prison or just, has become addicted, either relapsed and started their addiction over afresh or is trying going down that road for the first time. It just seems to be affecting everybody. This myth that we used to live with in this country, that addicts were only really genuinely poor people, these disgusting, twisted human beings that that rolled around and slept in the gutter, and wore trench coats and had no teeth. That's how I used to think about addicts when I was growing up. I used to think that they were these like almost zombie-like creatures. That myth has been largely destroyed by this opioid crisis that's going on now. People, everybody of every stripe, nation, creed, and religion, and ethnic group and sexual orientation have been completely had their worlds turned upside down by this opioid or opiate crisis, this addiction epidemic that has taken over the country. I've heard it said many times before that this is the worst addiction related epidemic in the history of this country. I know that during the time of the Civil War, there was a lot of drugs going around just because people didn't understand the negative and the addiction, the habit forming consequences of using like morphine and cocaine. So they would treat soldiers during the Civil War with morphine and they would become addicted to it. They used to call it the old soldier's disease. And they didn't understand how addicting morphine actually was, or cocaine. They used to actually sell cocaine in many different forms. Like you could get it as a spray, like an oral spray at your local country store in the town back in like the 1800s with the settlers moving out west across the frontier. Yeah, you could get cocaine almost to treat any ailment, from fatigue. Obviously, it's great for fatigue, but to just the common cold or a backache, they would give you, laudanum, which is liquid opium or cocaine in various different forms, or morphine if you actually went to your doctor, and you could get that in pill form or an injection. So, but that was largely due to ignorance, that we just didn't understand. But this point where we're at now, there's no debate that people understand the negative effects of these drugs. Now there's a definite reality that it took us a while to understand that these pharmaceutical pills like OxyContin. And Percocet and some of the others, that we were told in the early and late 90s that OxyContin was nowhere near as addictive as heroin. And that's why I forget. I think the name of the company is Purdue, is now being sold into or sued into oblivion because they marketed that total outrageous lie, and got so many people addicted to OxyContin, because there's no difference between OxyContin and Percocet and heroin. It is heroin. Like I said, there's no difference whatsoever, except it's just a lab produced heroin rather than some gangster making it in his oven. These are instead doctors and scientists actually producing heroin, and then doctors giving it out in scripts. So the doctor actually becomes your drug dealer in essence. But I ran across a post, and I'm a member of a couple different addiction groups on Facebook, like support groups. And I ran across a young man's post. I'm not going to give his name because, it's not my business to do that. But I'm going to read his post and just not give his name. and it's a generic post in the sense that you will run across hundreds and hundreds of these types of posts if you're a member of these groups. And once I read it, then we'll just kind of go into maybe some of my experience with kind of what he's talking about in his post, and why, again, I think that, this, maybe how young people can kind of see their way through this epidemic, how to get yourself out of it, because there is a way to escape. I'm not perfect. If anybody can get out of that quagmire, um, surely if I can do it, you can. So I'm going to read this real quick, and then we'll just kind of discuss it, and then yeah. So hold on, let me find it if I can. Okay, I'm not going to read this guy's name, but this is in a Facebook group. Whoops. Okay, so this is his experience and where he's kind of at right now, and he's asking for advice and support. Um, and for any of you that maybe are listening to this who have experience with addiction, this is going to, ring true. Probably bring back a whole lot of bad memories. But as they say in the NA groups, uh, you have to get this off your chest. You have to talk about this stuff. You have to constantly remind yourself of the place where you came from so you don't end up back there again. Because it's very easy, and anyone who's been through this before will know, it's very, very easy to come out of addiction, and then your mind will play tricks on you. And when you think back and remember, your past experiences with the drug, your mind will play tricks on you sometimes, and and you'll start, when you're thinking back, you'll only be thinking about the good times. You'll have these selective memories where you're only thinking about the positive, fun times, or the way the drug made you feel back in the good old times before it got real nasty. And your mind will not replay memories of how dark things got, how awful it felt to feel sick, the devastation it played on your finances and your relationships with your family, friends, loved one, co-workers, whatever, the law, your stints in rehab and prison, whatever. You won't remember that stuff, but your mind will kind of just be, you know, selectively replaying these images of feeling warm and fuzzy, and just that brand new feeling you had when you first started using the drug, like it was this exciting new secret that nobody else had and you had, and it was unlocking a door to this insular world of comfort and safety. It was like this barrier between you and reality, this soft, fuzzy, warm barrier to where reality couldn't hurt you. The drug does a lot to your mind. It really does, and it can play havoc on the way you perceive reality. But anyway, here's this guy's post. He says, "I'm now $25,000 in debt from my heroin usage over the last year." And he says, "I snort, I don't shoot." Which, I'll tell you, if you're $25,000 in debt from snorting, that's phenomenal. That's a tremendous amount of use. Usually, shooting, you blow through money a lot faster than snorting it, but yeah, that's a lot of money. I have gotten sick with no heroin many times, and each time it's sheer hell. He says, "I want to get clean, but I don't know what to do. I'm broke now, and I just can't bring myself to see a doctor to get help. I'm afraid that they'll take me off my Xanax and judge me. I just hate the sweats and the chills. I can't bathe when I'm sick either. The shower feels terrible. Kratom doesn't work on me." Or Kratom. I don't have much experience with it. Kratom, Kratom. I think it's like some type of plant or something that has opioid properties, so that addicts on the street will use it to kind of kind of like as a substitute for heroin when they can't get a hold of it, so that you don't withdraw as much. It kind of takes the edge off of your sickness or your withdrawal. Personally, I never used it, so I really don't know much about it. I think it kind of came when it got big on the streets was a little bit after I'd kind of gotten clean and everything. So I don't know anybody that tried it either. But anyway, so he says kratom doesn't work on me. Capsules, taking 15 at one time and still craving and going through horrible withdrawals. This is my first day, yet again, trying to be clean. I'm on hour 9 now, which is nothing. I'm scared of what's to come tonight, and tomorrow it's going to get very bad. I'm not at all looking forward to feeling the pain, the depression, just everything. I don't want to work. Tomorrow is Thursday, so hopefully by Friday I'll be to my worst and recover on the weekend. And then he says, how long does it take, guys, to stop feeling so crappy? Please help. Um, Now, I mean, that's a scenario that anyone who's been through addiction probably knows, and can say that they went through 100,000 times over. I mean, I went through periods where I didn't have extra cash or I was broke, and so I knew that it would be days before I had any money coming in, and so I and I didn't have Suboxones or methadone or anything like that to keep me from withdrawing. So that's a horrible feeling to know that like you have 3 or 4 days ahead of you where you really don't have any prospects for getting something that'll make you feel good, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're going to be withdrawing your face off for like 3 or 4 days. That's a horrible feeling. um, and I think until people really stop to and not experience withdrawal, but I almost wish that even people that haven't been addicted, who are kind of judgmental of addicts, I wish that they could at least experience withdrawal just a little bit before they go um, and there's a I remember before I was an addict, I would see the behavior of addicts, and really, like, it used to just I used to just be speechless because they would be doing something over and over and over and over again that they knew was making them sick, and yet they continued to do it. So I used to wonder, like, okay, you have no money, you're sick, why not just bite the bullet and go through the misery, and then once you're on the other side, don't go back to it, because this is something that's ruined your life and made you sick. And I think a lot of people that have not been through addiction think that way. They view the addict as this kind of just completely irrational creature, and there's this frustration of like, why can't you just get it together? Um, and But until you've been through it, you can't understand how awful withdrawal is. It's not only um, a physical suffering. Like, I've heard people describe it as like the flu times 1,000. I overall I could deal with the physical part of it. It was more the mental part of it that destroyed me. The depression is like the blackest depression that you can possibly ever go through. I mean, just this feeling of intense isolation from everyone around you, and just the everything is bleak and dark and gray and just hopeless, and it's the most awful feeling in the world. And then on top of that, you're pouring sweat one minute and then you're cold the next. Your entire body has that restless leg syndrome feeling going through it. You feel absolutely hopeless, helpless. Your emotions go from plummets of absolute despair to irrational euphoria. At the in 5 seconds you can experience pure despair and elation, and that fluctuates constantly throughout the day, throughout your withdrawal. At least it did for me. And everybody has their own withdrawal experiences, but until you go through that, it's very hard to understand why somebody would run and answer the phone the minute their dealer calls, and run out the door. They're trying to escape pain and suffering at that point. Once you're addicted, you're trying to escape the nightmare of withdrawal. Now, why do you continue to go back after you've gone through the sickness and everything, and you're clean? You're not using, and it's because if you've been using the drug for any number of years, that it I mean, scientists have found this out, that it alters the way your brain functions, the way you view reality, the way you process events and emotion. It really changes you in a lot of core ways, in a lot of fundamental ways. You you've changed the way you view reality, the way you take in information, the way you process emotions, the way you process interactions with people. All of a sudden, you have to relearn all of that. And while you're having to relearn just how to be a normal human being again, for most people, you're also dealing with the wreckage that you've caused in the interim period of your addiction. So it's not just that you're rebuilding yourself and having to figure out again who you are as even as just a person, and how to deal with people, how to deal with emotion, because dope, numbs your emotions. It really does. You don't feel emotions the way a normal person does. You're numb, generally speaking. So now all of a sudden you have to process emotion. What sounds like a small thing, it's actually a big thing. It's a huge deal. And for me, I felt like I was going insane half the time. I really did. I mean, because I was so used to everything being at a 5, and where everybody else was experiencing emotion at like a 50 or a 60 or a 70. And without the drug, all of a sudden now I'm getting emotions coming through, experiencing them as a normal human being when I'm used to them just being completely numbed, barely feeling them at all. Happiness, joy, sadness, all those things, I didn't experience them really for years and years and years because it was just completely just flatlined. And then when you do experience it, all of a sudden, there's not, the life doesn't wait for you to get to readjust back to reality. Life marches on. So you take that drug away, life doesn't put on the training wheels and, oh, okay, well, we'll let you get back to reality slowly. No, everything about it comes flooding in suddenly. And you have to adjust to that. And in the meantime, you're dealing with debt, with broken relationships, with friends who have died or are in prison, or maybe you got arrested and you have court cases and probation and all these other kinds of things. You're dealing with tremendous wreckage that you have caused, and that in turn, brings about huge feelings of guilt and frustration and doubt and sorrow a lot of people, they have dysfunctional families, so the addict gets blamed quite a bit. And no matter how hard they try in recovery, it's never good enough. So it's very, very easy to um, to just feel very overwhelmed in the midst of all that. And meanwhile, while you're feeling overwhelmed and all these doubts are flooding down on top of you, that devil side to you, the addiction side of your brain, it didn't disappear. It's still there, telling you all this will just go away if you make that phone call or if you go back to the city. You know that you can escape from all this for a few hours if you just go back to the city, if you just call that person and go get the drug again. That voice is never to be underestimated because it insinuates, or it's very, very subtle. It's just like temptation, the way it's described in the Bible, as this very subtle thing, the way it undermines and undercuts foundational truths. So while you're in recovery and everything, that the best thing for you is to pursue a normal life and to stay away from this thing which has ruined everything about you and your life and all the good things in it. But yet the devil, basically, which is like the drug, whispers always in your ear, you can feel better, you can feel better. Is that really the best way to go? Do those people really care about you? What are you going to do with your life? And that's the most important thing. And we're going to end on this because this isn't going to be a long episode. But I think that what I see, there are many, many different reasons for why this opioid crisis is as pronounced and as big and as devastating as it is, and why I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But one of the most critical reasons, I think, for why so many young people are really falling into the arms of addiction. And I'll just use myself as an example, is that, and I want to say this so that you understand it. Um, Basically, I think that a lot of us have put so much of, invested so much of ourselves in material and physical meaning, that it's left this gaping hole that we know instinctively cannot be filled, yet we don't know how to fill it, and so we try to escape that reality with the drug. Now, this isn't the only reason people go and use drugs. There's a 50,000 reason for every person has a million reasons why they use the drug, but I think that this loss of meaning and this loss of identity, which seems to have really taken hold of Western culture lately, and I think it has a lot to do with the postmodern relativistic view of the world that says that every truth is true. Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. There is no ultimate truth. So you're telling kids from a very early age that there is no meaning, there is no truth. You create your own. And yet I think each person knows instinctively how impossible and how foolish that really is in a society that has put that as it becomes increasingly technologically advanced, and our freedoms are slowly evaporating over time, and as the governments become even ever more globalized, the power of the individual is reduced on a daily, day by day basis. Our freedoms, we all know this just by the power of technology and the internet, the invasiveness of technology in our lives. We're seeing the stories on the news constantly about it. Google recording our conversations through our iPhone or whatever. I'm mixing my companies up here, but you know, I don't feel like I need to explain this. I mean, your average Joe out on the street knows that technology is both a blessing and a curse. And the curse of it is that our privacy and our freedoms are slowly evaporating. So if you tell young people that there is no ultimate truth, there is no ultimate meaning to life, and then at the same time you evaporate their sense of privacy and their sense of self and of freedom, and you tell them that ultimately there is no purpose to life, um, and also as particularly in America, as we view as we're front row witnesses to our government and our culture running amok. I mean, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, the Republicans are outrageously corrupt. The Democrats are outrageously corrupt. And as an average citizen, we all feel very helpless about it. Our votes don't seem to matter. These people commit outrageous crimes, and then they walk off scot-free, most of them, or they commit suicide in their prison cells like Epstein. There just seems to be this very big sense. I'm getting it from, I see it in a lot of interviews and articles, even from places like the New York Times, that people are just feeling increasingly isolated and devalued. And if you do that to a culture, particularly young people as they're coming up, you're teaching them in the schools that they have no meaning, that we're all just cosmic accidents, that truth is a relative thing. There's really no concrete foundation that you can stand on and trust in for a grounding for reality around you. And then at the same time that you're being taught that, you live in a culture that is permeated by the outward appearance. This total fixation on physical beauty and physical perfection, totally ignoring the inward character of an individual. And so many teenagers, and we know this just from statistics and different CNN has done work on this, and so has the Washington Post, and so has Fox News. The detrimental effects that social media has had on teenagers' self-esteem, um, how wrapped up in social media that teenagers get to where their entire sense of self is invested in how many subscribers they have on their YouTube channel or how many likes they get on a picture on Instagram or Facebook. And all this stuff ties together. These aren't isolated. People don't oftentimes do not talk about this or do not bring this up or don't connect the dots. These things are not isolated problems, telling kids that there is no meaning. We're a cosmic accident over here. Giving them the impression that the outward appearance is the prime importance, like what social media is doing. The government just running totally amok. People becoming more and more isolated and less community oriented as time goes on. The family unit fracturing and dissolving and falling apart. The fatherlessness rates in the African American community are upwards of 70%, and they're skyrocketing in the white community as well. I think the Latino community is the only one that has actual families, and that's because they are traditionally Catholic and Judeo-Christian. Um, but the entire thrust of where the Western culture is going is this very isolated, meaningless, purposelessness, that just devalues gender, the image of man. No longer are we made in the image of God, but we're just highly evolved animals, basically. Um, and then we're told that we have to work on our self-worth. But what does that even mean in a culture that largely values your self-worth off of how many likes you get on Facebook or Instagram? Um, and it may seem like I'm just rambling about this stuff, but think about it for a minute. Our kids are absorbing this on a daily basis in their education system through the public schools that are telling them that they're cosmic accidents, that we're just highly evolved animals. And then they get on their social media platforms and are being taught and learning by experience that the real value and meaning to life is how many subscribers you have on a given platform or how many likes a picture gets, whether you can Photoshop your picture so that you don't have a zit on your forehead or you're not overweight. Everything is the temporary, the physical, the outer shell. Where are the social media sites that value character? I don't see it. Where is the focus on character, on patience, on peace, on hard work, or on perseverance? We're not taught any of that anymore. And then we wonder why our kids are just are rushing to the drug, because I think that there is innately within each one of us, even at an early age, even back when you're a teenager, I think there's something within you that just screams that there has got to be something more than all of this nonsense that is just being shoved down their throats in the school systems, on social media, everywhere. I think everybody knows this. The Bible talks about it, about that God has general revelation has given a witness for himself that he is there through creation. We know he is there. And then there's special revelation, which reveals the gospel and his character. But even more than that, it says that it is written the law of God on our hearts. So we know that there is something beyond this, that this temporary nonsense of Facebook likes and YouTube subscribers, as much as I would like more YouTube subscribers, I know ultimately that it has absolutely no bearing on my value as a person, and that my YouTube channel could collapse, everybody unsubscribe from me tomorrow, and I would be disappointed, sure, but it would do nothing towards how I view myself as a person. My value is not wrapped up in that. But so many people seem to think that advertise the advertisement based culture, this pop culture, this Hollywood based fantasy world that we seem to aspire to through social media. We seem to think that this, for some reason, is what we should all just go for, and will add value and meaning to our lives. And how bitterly disappointed are people when they find out that it really does not fill that gap that they have deep within themselves. When you finally reach the pinnacle of success on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or what have you, and you get that million subscribers, and you realize you've reached the top of the mountain, and you realize, is this all there is? Really, is this all there is? And you realize how awful a feeling it must be for those who get to the top and realize that getting there really doesn't mean all that much, and that they still have this burning, gnawing need or hole within them that they just can't fill. Which would be my second reason, I think, for why, and I'm going to wrap this up now, but why the opioid crisis isn't going anywhere. Because people, when it comes to things like pleasure or things that are addicting, people don't tend to just, when you realize that this just isn't cutting it, let's say sex or drugs or something like that, this just isn't cutting it. You realize that you could do every bag of heroin in the world and it would not satisfy, it would not fill. As the old saying goes, one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. It doesn't matter how many sexual encounters you have, you will still be lonely and in despair. But the nature of addiction is such that even when you know that this thing will never satisfy you, you still pursue it with a death-like seriousness. The true addict plays for keeps, man. I'm telling you that. I know people that are true. I mean, dyed in the wool addicts, and it does not matter how many overdoses they have, how many times they've been arrested. They are hell bent on that drug, and nothing will keep them from it. They play for keeps, and for them, it's not all ideas of meaning and a purpose have long. They would laugh at you if you even brought such a topic up. Um, so yeah, but I think for our young people, and particularly people in like these kind of Facebook groups, when I read those kind of posts, it just reminds me of that situation that I used to be in with addiction, where everything, because of how the drug warps your sense of reality and really changes how you think and how you behave and how you view life around you, how it instills in you a total and absolute despair. You think about death every day. I think any addict that's honest would tell you that they think about death or the end every day, and you don't care. You really don't. It's addiction is the most hopeless, pointless, miserable thing that you can ever put yourself through. And if there's anything that I could tell any addicts right now, it's that don't believe the lie that the culture is trying to put out there, that there is nothing more than this world, or that there is no meaning. There is absolute meaning. There is something beyond this temporary physical world, and killing yourself is not worth finding out, like finding out that way. Um, which is certainly not the best way to go and find out whether there's an afterlife. But don't get sucked in. Don't believe this crap, this facade, this advertising shtick, the Hollywood bubble, this pointless narrative, the TV world, the YouTube, the social media garbage that is everywhere all around us and advertising. You can't turn anywhere without being just completely enveloped by this technological bubble that just seems to be closing in from every different direction, and really drowning out silence, which all of us really desperately need. Just the ability to go to a room where there's no TV, there's no cars, there's no video games, there's no music, there's no laptops, and just be quiet and pray and think and maybe even read a book. Read the Bible, for goodness sakes. Read something of value. I, the less time you have to just be to yourself and to pray and to think and to just to dream, to daydream, the better you will feel about life. Never forget that each one of us has value, has meaning, and has a purpose. We are not statistics. Nobody was born with the purpose of being a statistic. That is nobody was intended for that. Nobody was intended to be 25,635 death. Number 35 overdoses this year in Pennsylvania. Nobody was intended for that. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still happen. We make mistakes and we have a free will, but that does not mean that that's what we were all intended for. We are better than that. Every single one of us who are addicts, we know, you know what you're capable of. I know what I am capable of. We have all been given gifts and meaning and purpose. And don't allow yourself to believe the lie that all of this world is some kind of cosmic mistake and that you are just a highly evolved animal and that there is no purpose or no meaning. That way lies death. That way lies insanity. That way lies futility. Rise above it. Don't believe it. Open your Bible and actually think about what you're reading as you read it. Apply it to life around you, and you'll see that there is actually there's a lot there that you're just that you probably did not know was there. And pray to God that he would open your eyes as you read the Bible, and reveal himself to you, because he is there. We just have become very good in this culture of drowning him out, and kicking him out of our public school and then wondering why everything goes to hell. But anyway, I didn't want to go too long with this episode. If you're suffering from addiction or what have you, I'm not going to go into, I could go into my own personal opinions of whether I think rehab is better or the maintenance programs. I would suggest the maintenance programs, honestly. Methadone or Suboxone, it's what's worked for me. I think that'll give you your best running shot is getting on a maintenance program. But do it seriously. Don't do it just to get your script of Suboxone and then go out on the street, sell it to people, and keeping just a couple for yourself for a rainy day and then using the money to go get. No, take it seriously. Unless you want to end up as a statistic, just another overdose, that people can talk about and cry about on Facebook for a few days, but life marches on. It always will. Okay, don't get left behind as a statistic. You're better than that. We all are. We all have a purpose. We all have value. We all have meaning. Each and every single one of us has been made in the image of God. Don't ever forget that. All right. Good night, and God be with you.